Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Clarity in the Chaos, in which we attempt to bring some vertical clarity into our horizontal chaos going on around us. I think we could safely say that most all of everyone has been caught unaware by the events of our day, but sadly it has caught many unprepared for the events of our day. And the Bible speaks to the need to prepare in one season in preparation for what's coming in the next season. And we're looking at the book of Proverbs during this time, and we're pulling out select passages from each chapter that relate to the events of our day and to know how we can get wisdom and clarity for what's happening in our world today and know how to respond. So today we're in chapter 6 of Proverbs, and we'll begin in verse 6 and read through verse 8. And there's wisdom for us here as we think about seasons and preparing for times like this. Verse 6 says, "Go to the ant, you sluggard. Consider her ways and be wise, which having no captain, overseer, or ruler, provides her supplies in the summer and gathers her food in the harvest." Here God uses part of his creation to teach us some spiritual truth and some life lessons. And it tells us something about those who are wise. The wise understand that God works in seasons. He's created the seasons for us to live through each year, but they have purpose, not just here on this earth, but in spiritual truth as well. It teaches us that God works in seasons. There are times of surplus, and there are times of need. There is time for life. There's a time for death. There's a time for work. There's a time for rest. There's a time to plant, and there's a time for harvest. And as we understand that, not just within our calendar year, but even across the years and decades and generations, we begin to understand something about how God works. It's part of his work as an author and a story writer as he works in our lives and even in the story of time in which he's created. He works in seasons, and what he does in one season is preparation for the next as part of his unfolding story. And the wise understand this, and they know what to do in each season. I remember my dad loved to garden, and he had a large half-acre garden, and he worked it. After he retired, you'd find him out there early in the morning with his tiller. He was preparing the ground for the time of planting. He was breaking up the dirt. He was removing sticks and stones and roots that were going to be in the way. And then when it came time to plant, he was out there planting. When it came time to remove the weeds, he worked that. When it was time for harvest, he worked that part of his garden. And then came the time of canning. They would come inside and they would can. It would be hot outside and it'd be hot inside, and they would can and prepare. But when the winter months came, they were prepared. They knew what to do in each season. He knew exactly what needed to be done so that in the time of winter, we would have food and we would have plenty. And that's what the wise do. They understand from season to season what to do during that time. Sometimes when you get in the midst of the season, it can seem like an endless season. And in our culture, we've been through a season where there had been plenty. And when you live as though there's plenty all the time, then you don't live in preparation for a time when there won't be. But the wise know that seasons come and seasons go, and they even rest in the season. They are not panicked by what's happening in the season because they know it's only preparation for the next season. Spring is only set up for the summer. Summer is only preparation for the fall, and fall is only set up for the winter, which brings us back to the spring again. And the wise know how to rest in each season, to not panic, to not be fearful, to not worry, because there's another season coming. And the wise anticipate the seasons. They look forward to them. They know they're coming, and that helps give them rest in the midst of it. And what's interesting about the ant, the scripture points out, says they have no captain, no overseer or ruler. They don't have to be told by anyone else what to do and when to do. They have an internal drive that motivates them. This is the time to prepare. This is the time to store up. And they do that. As believers, we should have that kind of wisdom to know there are seasons, there are times, and we prepare in the season of plenty for the season when there won't be plenty. And there's a time to have much, and there's a time to use what we have prepared and stored. So for many today, this time has come as a corrective. This time has caught many unaware and unprepared. And so materially, we're all learning some lessons about being prepared. These are lessons that our grandparents and great-grandparents already knew. They grew up during the Great Depression, and they knew there was a need to prepare, and they stayed prepared. There was never any certainty about the moment you were in because another season would come. So for many, this comes as a corrective today to begin to store up and prepare for another day. And that's true materially, but it's also true spiritually. God gives us truth from His Word that He plants in our heart for the moment, but for a day coming as well. So those who are wise, they prepare for the next season. They're always working in the season. So in this season, as God takes us through what may be a corrective for many, use it to allow Him to break up the soil of your heart, plant truth that He is planting in you, and allow Him to harvest that in time and allow it to speak to you. Don't miss what's happening in this season in your life. Take in what God is doing. As you do, you'll find clarity in the midst of the chaos.